Hey, welcome back. In this video, we're going to walk through an exercise that I call BRAVE, which stands for Breakthrough, Resistance, Accelerated, Visualization, Exercise. As we discussed in the first video, logic and visualization are two of the ways that we can address our detrimental mental programs. We also know that logic on its own is the least effective way to cause change. That's why something can be common sense but not common practice. You'll also remember that in my personal experience, I have found visualization to be the most powerful way to address and alter our mental programming, especially when implemented by a fully qualified hypnotherapist. I've seen powerful changes happen quickly, both in my clients and myself using this technique. For example, I had a fear of flying cured with just one session working with a hypnotherapist. My subconscious had created a program that told me flying was dangerous because my mother once told me a story about how a plane that was co-owned by my grandfather had crashed, killing his business partner. I don't think it comes as much of a surprise that a 3-year-old brain would view flying as dangerous, even though statistically by far it's the safest form of travel. So while I consciously knew all the statistics, it wasn't until I visualized that memory with the hypnotherapist that the logic was allowed to permeate my subconscious and create the change. Now here's the thing. While I do think that everyone looking to perform at a high level in their industry should work regularly with a hypnotherapist, I know it's not feasible for everyone to do that on a regular basis. And even if you do work with one, there are situations that pop up that you'll need to deal with on your own. It's also very important to be well versed in addressing your detrimental mental programs on your own, as no matter how often you get help from someone else, your programs will be with you 24/7, 365 days a year. And this is why I developed BRAVE. It's a 7-step process where you input your resistances in one end, reveal the mental program that's behind the resistance, understand why the program exists, and analyze the costs and benefits of breaking through it. This works well when you have a situation that you consciously understand is holding you back, and obviously won't work in the instances where you're unaware of the problem. Essentially, we're using visualization techniques to bust through your resistance by delivering logic to your subconscious. This gives you a clear understanding of the nature of your resistances, and awareness is the first step in shifting the decision making from the subconscious to the conscious mind. You'll also take a deep look at the risks you'll face by taking action, as well as the potential benefits, which will trigger the next time you face resistance, giving you more power to control your actions. This is not an exercise that you'll do once and be done with it. You'll want to do it multiple times to deal with multiple resistances and repeat the process many times for each. It's a tool that you'll use over and over again for the rest of your life. Chances are you will not completely remove or rewrite your mental programming doing this exercise just once. Even with something as powerful as guided hypnotherapy, that's a very rare result. When attempting to address detrimental mental programs on your own, repetition is the key to success. The exercise will give you a stronger ability to take your desired action. And as you consciously decide to push through the resistance, you'll slowly start to rewrite your program, with it getting a bit easier each time you do it. To make sure you stay strong, go back and repeat the exercise so the visualizations are fresh in your mind. Alright, so make sure you've either printed out or have the worksheet open in front of you now, as we'll be going through it together. For the first few times you do this exercise, you'll want to follow along with me and do it that way. Eventually you'll get down to the point where you can do it by memory and do it quickly. Writing it out by hand usually will get the best result, but once you're very familiar with the exercise, you'll be able to run through it all in your mind if an unexpected resistance shows up in a situation where you have no time to go out and print a worksheet. Okay, so let's get started. Step 1 of this exercise is to list the resistance that you'll be working through now. It's important to only do one at a time, as we want to give each resistance our full focus. As I mentioned, this is an exercise that you can and will do multiple times, so make sure to give each item the full attention it deserves. A resistance is an area of your game or life that you know is holding you back. It's an action that you know you should be taking, but can't consistently make yourself do it. It's something that you consciously know will move you closer to where you want to be, but for some reason that never seems to happen. In the last video, I had you list out 3 things that the best poker players in the world do consistently that you do not. Use one of those 3 items for this exercise. Go ahead and write that down in the What is your resistance section of the worksheet. Feel free to pause or rewind this video if you need the time. The next part might be the most difficult part, especially for logical thinking poker players. In this step, we're going to take a look at the resistance and ask, how is my mental programming trying to protect me? As we discussed in the last video, your mental programs are all designed to protect you, even if it's often misguided and inefficient. But to understand why a mental program runs in the first place, it's important to understand what it's attempting to protect you from. For this exercise, I'm going to use a resistance to proper study. You know you should put in the work, but you just can't bring yourself to do the deep study that you know is necessary to make it far in the game. So how could this resistance possibly be protecting you? Obviously, it's not helping us logically, at least not if our main goal is to become a successful poker player. To figure out what it's protecting us from, we can explore some of the ways that things can go wrong if we do take the action. And when I say go wrong, we don't need to limit it to completely rational scenarios. Think of these mental programs as the overprotective mother who sees danger around every corner. So what could go wrong if we do study? Well, we could run into a situation where we get stuck and can't figure out the right answer. This might leave us feeling stuck, frustrated, or stupid. We might also put everything we have into studying the game and never achieve the success we desire. This might leave us feeling like a failure, like even our best effort wasn't good enough. In my experience, this fear of failure is at the heart of a resistance to study. So in this scenario, I would write down, this mental program is trying to protect me from the pain I would feel if I were to fail after all of that hard work. Now that you know what the resistance is trying to protect you from, I want you to give it a short name that describes the program. Giving it a name makes it a bit more tangible in your mind. In this scenario, I would call it fear of failure. Other names might be something like fear of success, fear of uncertainty, money is bad, or I don't deserve success. Name it whatever you want as long as it's something that makes it instantly recognizable as what the program is trying to protect you from. I found putting a name to a program can help you recognize that the same program can run in different situations where you might not otherwise make the connection. Alright, now that we know the scenario our mental program runs, aka the resistance we put into step 1, and what the program is trying to protect us from, it's time to start the visualization part of the exercise. In this section of the exercise, we're going to visualize the nightmare scenario. I almost called this section the worst case scenario, but I expect if I did that, a lot of you poker players would take me too literally and come up with some wild stuff. Like the worst case scenario in our fear of failure study example, we'd probably be sitting down for a study session just as Independence Day style alien invasion started, where the human race is taken over and forced to serve as slaves for our new alien overlords. That's not quite what we're looking for here. What we're looking for is the nightmare scenario that's still a pretty big stretch, but still has at least some single-digit chance to actually happen. Keeping with the study example, I would visualize a scenario where I put 100% effort into studying, but fell short anyways. I would close my eyes and picture myself sitting in front of my computer, looking at my database at the end of a long study session. I'd try to experience what it felt like as I came to the realization that after all this time and effort, my results still weren't where they needed to be. I'd imagine what it would be like to tell my significant other, family, or poker friends that I'd no longer be following my dream of becoming a long-term professional poker player. For just a few minutes, I would live out the nightmare scenario in my head so I could understand exactly where my mental program was coming from and the situation I was trying to avoid. So pause the video, take a few moments to write down what that experience was like in the third section of this worksheet. Obviously, this will be a bit of a challenge and not the most pleasant part of the exercise, but it's incredibly important that you do it anyway. Alright, nice work making it through that part of the exercise. Now we can start to have some fun with it. This next section is more visualization. It's called the optimal response. Once again, I want you to close your eyes and visualize the nightmare scenario. Only this time I want you to go one step further. I want you to picture yourself encountering the nightmare scenario and facing it with the optimal response. The optimal response is the best possible way you can imagine dealing with the nightmare scenario. It's how the best possible version of yourself would react in the face of great adversity. So in our study example, the nightmare scenario was that we put everything into studying the game, but we still fell short of achieving the poker success we dreamed of. So now I'd close my eyes and quickly run through the nightmare scenario again. Only this time I would see myself explaining the realization that I wasn't going to make it in poker, not as a failure, but as a new chapter. I would see myself having amazing and hope-filled conversation with the person I was closest with about my plans and take everything I'd learned in my poker journey and use it to find success in another area. I would feel the excitement that came with starting a new chapter in my life and knowing the skills that I learned trying my hand at poker hadn't gone to waste. So now pause this video again and visualize what your optimal response would be like to your nightmare scenario. Alright, we're back. I really hope you're actually pausing this video along the way and working through this exercise. Just listening to me give examples will do nothing. The benefit comes from doing it yourself. If you've been taking action so far, congratulations. How did it feel to face that nightmare scenario and respond to it optimally? A big part of being confident is knowing that you'll be able to handle anything the game throws at you. And working through this visualization is a way to start creating that ability. By this point, you should have a pretty good understanding of why your detrimental negative program exists. Sure, it'd be ideal if it never existed in the first place, but you now have some empathy for why it exists and understand what it's trying to protect you from, even if it's misguided. Now we need to take a look at the benefits gained when you do take action. In this section, I want you to visualize what would happen if you ignored the resistance your detrimental mental program created and things turned out well. So keeping with the study exercise, I would close my eyes and picture myself sitting down to study. I would feel the extra confidence that came with my ever-increasing knowledge. I would see myself at the table recognizing a situation that I'd recently worked on. I'd smile to myself knowing that I knew the correct answer. I would see my long-term results slowly improving alongside my skills. I would feel the shift in my mindset that occurs when bad beats of the game no longer bothered me, as my deep understanding of the game kept me confident that the money would come my way eventually. I would see myself struggling to figure out a certain spot, continuing to work through it, and feel how it felt when I finally got to the correct answer. I would feel the confidence that came with knowing that even if the answers didn't come easily, I have the ability to get there eventually. So now it's your turn. Have some fun with this part. Pause the video and take some time to visualize the upside that's possible if you push through the resistance that you're working on now. Great, I hope that was enjoyable for you. Make sure to write down what you experienced in the upside section of the worksheet. Alright, nice work. We're now on the final step. First, a quick recap of what we've done so far. We started by identifying a resistance that you constantly find yourself running up against. Next, we investigated the potential reason that it might exist and examined what it was trying to protect us from. Then we looked at things from the perspective as the detrimental mindset program and visualized the nightmare scenario that it was trying to protect us from. From there, we took that nightmare scenario and formulated an optimal response. We then took a look at the upside. What good could come if we broke through that resistance and took action that we were previously avoiding? At this point, we come to the final part of the exercise. We are now finally at a point where we can start using logic and it can have an impact. Now is where we ask ourselves, is it worth it? Are you comfortable risking the nightmare scenario for a chance at the upside, knowing that you have the optimal response prepared? Is that enough to help you break through the resistance caused by the mental program the next time it runs in order to achieve the positive benefits? For most of the resistances you run through this exercise, you'll find that yes, it's worth it to ignore the program. Knowing that you have that optimal response planned helps nudge things in the right direction when trying to achieve the upside. That being said, sometimes the answer is no. Sometimes what the program is trying to protect you from is a real and legitimate threat. Sometimes the resistance created by your programs is there for a very good reason. Either way, after doing this exercise, you'll have a deeper understanding and awareness of the reasons you behave the way you do, and a logical view of the costs and benefits of inaction. So the final part of this exercise is to make that choice and commit to it by checking yes or no in the box. Congratulations on making it through Brave for the first time. This isn't something that takes a whole lot of time, anywhere from 5 to 30 minutes if you really want to dive deep into each visualization. But the benefits can be immediate and incredibly powerful. If you decided that yes, it's worth it to push through, then I expect that next time you run into this scenario, you'll find that the resistance has weakened. Maybe it's so small you don't have to think twice about taking action. Or maybe you still have to exert a little bit of willpower to push through. Either way, you're on the path to rewriting that mental program and turning it into something that propels you forward instead of holding you back. So I've made sure to include a standalone copy of this exercise in the download section. Run through this exercise again with the other 2 resistances that you wrote down earlier, and remember to regularly refer back to this video when you want to go through it again in the future. Excellent work, and I'll see you in the next video.